Alright, so we're back once again, and today, as you can probably see, we are playing the Conqueror. A little bit of a weaker version of the Thunder. That's the way I at least like to think of it. On our team we do have a couple of Thunders, we do have a Yamato and a Bismarck, so this is going to be a pretty interesting game. Now usually you wouldn't describe the Conqueror as a tank, but in this game I'm going to maybe present a case, or maybe present some situations where, well, although it doesn't say that on the tin, the Conqueror sometimes just has to do it. And, well, we're going to go over maybe some of the best practices to actually achieve that goal. But with that being said, we do spawn on the left hand side of the map, and well, with this map, as you can see on the minimap, there's a big open space right in front of us, and what that means is that, well, we're going to have to hold off any enemy push that does come our way. Because if you look on the other side of the map, it is a bit of a choke point, which means there's going to be a bit of a standoff. So if a team can get a considerable push on the other side of the map, i.e. the part I'm on, well, it does really increase your chances to actually win the game. Sadly though, if you'll notice, you can see the Thunder, and well, although the Riga does look as though it's coming to aid me in pushing this flank, or at least defending it, sadly that doesn't end up happening. And as a result, I'm left to basically very carefully give a show of force, or just completely defend this flank by myself. Now that's not all bad news. The Conqueror, again, for all its misgivings, or you know, for all its bad aspects, it is a pretty nice ship to play. You do get 3 guns per turret, which means you do get that's about what, 4 turrets more than the Thunder, which can put a lot of enemy players off. If you see 9 shells, 12 shells coming flying at you, each with a really high chance of setting a fire, you're probably going to think twice about actually pushing into that, you know, that side of the map. Which is my aim goal, or my main goal, I should rather say. If you look, you see the Shikishima, you see the Thunder, you see another Thunder, and a Brindisi. And if you look on our side of the map, you'll see our Riga and Thunder very quickly deciding that the center of the map is the best position to be for some reason. Now, I wouldn't argue all this much. I wouldn't even say that's a bad position to be in, frankly. If you look at the Yamato's position, it's actually not all that bad. Maybe he could be a bit closer in, but being in the center of the map in a battleship isn't all that bad of an idea. But you do have to remember there has to be, you know, a pulling force pulling the enemy team to the flanks in order for this being positioned in the center to actually create a broadside and create something to actually shoot at. There's no point everyone just huddling in the center. That's just going to lend yourself to getting focus fired extremely quickly. So we're going to sit wide, try and do as much damage, try and take as little as possible. Again, you do have the super heals on the ship, which makes it deceptively tanky. You know, it might not be tanky through stats, but through its healing abilities, it's definitely nothing to sleep on. Now that being said, it does look as though the Thunders, 2 enemy Thunders, are pulling an extremely wide line for some reason, which is a bit baffling to me. The Shikishima does seem to be pulling off, which, you know, gives us the opportunity to maybe push a little bit closer, pull a little bit maybe more central into the B zone, and you know, stop any ships that do decide to push down that flank. Now, I do hype central positioning a lot, but I think there is a variation of that where you can pull left center or right center. What I'm basically saying is that you can pull into these areas right here and these areas right here. You do still maintain some idea of centering, but it does allow you to react to very wide pushes on either flank, but also get some of those crossfires if, you know, the other side does push a little bit too hard. That's the best of both worlds. But with that being said, we do see the Thunders start to push in, and it is accompanied by a Brindisi. Now the Riga is a bit far away here, so again I have to be relatively careful. Again, we're just throwing out HE here. The AP on the Thunder, the Thunder, force of habit. the AP on the Conqueror isn't all that great. Now, of course, if you do get a broadside at close range, you're going to be wanting to shoot that AP. It's not that bad. Like we do here, we shoot it HE salvo. I'm not sure if I have expert loader. If I had expert loader and I was sure of it, I would have obviously switched to AP here. The damage potential is so much higher. But we do switch anyways after shooting that HE salvo, which does a significant amount of damage. Nothing to balk at. Balk at. Anyways. And for lack of a better word, I don't know really what this is, but the Mendici decides, well, he's put himself in a situation that he can't really get out of. And well, there's the strength of close range AP on the Conqueror. We do pick him up for the first kill today. The second of the game, which is always nice to see. Now at this point, we're free to push in. The Thunder's in a position, well, the second Thunder's in a position where he can't actually hit us. So what this comes down to now is basically a 1v1 between myself and the enemy Thunder positioned on that flank. Now, my main idea here is to push right. If I can maintain that island between me and that extra Thunder, then the risk of actually, taking significant damage is severely decreased, and I can engage in a 1v1 with the enemy Thunder. And I also have an eye on the caps in the map. Again, maintaining protection over C is always nice to have. They do have D, but again, I'm sensing a push coming from that area, which is why, again, you gotta have that left center positioning. Allows us to cover off the Thunder push, and if we need to, we can very quickly move right and, help out our team. That being said, we do lose a certain ship, the Talon. Again, I wasn't watching the other side of the map, so I don't know if that's a significant loss or not, but only time will tell. Now, something I don't play the Conqueror a hell of a lot. I always describe it as a bit of a nerfed Thunder, which I play a hell of a lot of. So again, switching between these two ships, I didn't actually notice a significant difference. Having the extra gun per turret really helps, compensate for the lack of, sometimes you get those salvos. It just happens with every ship. You get those salvos where the shells, the vertical dispersion on the shells, the horizontal dispersion on the shells just isn't right, and you end up hitting, you're getting overpens or shatters or something. But more often than not, even on the Thunder, those shells might end up doing nothing. You get no fires, you get nothing, even though the fire chance is pretty high. But on the Conqueror, those extra turrets really increase the chance of you actually, making every salvo count and doing significant damage with every salvo, whether it be actual damage or, just setting a couple of fires, which is always nice. Now again, this isn't an advertisement for basically doing, fire spamming, but again, in the context of the Conqueror, it's a really nice perk to have. That being said though, we do lose a couple more ships, and the enemy team does lose a couple more of their ships, which is interesting to say the least. They are pushing through D, but again, what tends to happen on this map, and like a lot of maps, the mentality of win harder tends to seep through, and teams decide that, well, they need to push. And well, generally the first team to push is generally the first team to lose the game, more often than not. Now don't get me wrong, there is times when you do need to push to create that crossfire. If there's an opportunity to push, you should take it. But more often than not, teams, and myself included, we tend to push before we need to. Again, patience is a virtue, and it's one that's going to win you the games if you use it correctly. Now at this point, as I discussed at the start of the video, the tankiness of the Conqueror does need to show itself at this point. Again, we're pushing very much more central now. Again, the enemy team decided to abandon the left-hand side of the screen, or left-hand side of the map, and that push, so we're pushing more right-focused or central push-focused in order to, stem the tide of that Petropavlovsk, the Iran, and the Shikishima, and the Ostergotland to an extent, all coming around that flank, especially now that we lost the Bismarck. Again, we have 3 battleships, they have 3 battleships, and they have an extra, they have an extra DD, which can pose a massive threat. And I want you to be wary here of how I'm angling my ship. The last spotted position of the Ostergotland was, straight bow on to me. That's why I'm positioning my ship. Holy moly. Sometimes speaking is hard. Kids, stay in school. You'll learn how to speak properly. But anyways, if you look, I'm angling a little bit towards the Thunder right now. But again, knowing Thunder players, they don't really know how to switch to AP in this situation and actually hit something. So I'm expecting HE to be predominantly the shells that come out of both of these thunders. I'm not too worried about the thunders. I'm more worried about the torpedoes, or the possible torpedoes that could come from the Östergötland. That's the main threat here, as we cross the 100k threshold, which is always good to see. And again, that's why I'm angling the way I am. Some might say I'm showing a bit too much broadside to the enemy thunders, but at this point, I don't want to angle out anymore. If I go full bow into both the thunders, I'm very, very susceptible to enemy torpedoes, which can do a significantly more amount of damage, or a hell of a lot more damage. Now at this point we do spot the Östergötland, which is a good sign for us. And he is a decent distance away, which means I can angle a little bit more effectively towards the two thunders. And well, at this point there's nothing really more to say than I'm being focused by both. But, and this is the point right here. I basically lost a quarter of my HP right there, and thanks to the super heal, it's as if nothing's really happened. And again, you don't want to use your damage con on one fire, you want to wait to at least get 2 or 3 fires and then use it. It's a lot more effective that way. If you use it on one fire and you damage con it, then the enemy has a really easy time of resetting you on fire. So it's better to leave one fire there than damage con it. Again, prime example right here. I set one fire on the enemy thunder, he didn't damage con it. I fired another salvo, I got 3 fires, but luckily he saved his damage con so he didn't burn out, because he would have burned out in that scenario. Luckily enough, the angling paid off against the Östergötland, which means that, well, we don't eat torpedoes, which is always nice to see. And at this point we get a little respite. Again, we're up on points, we don't need to push, we need to be passive right here. Now, again, they could cap C, and then at that point we'd have to be proactive. But in this scenario and at this point in the game, we don't really need to push the issue all that much. Now again, remember, I'm constantly angling against the Östergötland. There is no bigger threat in the game than the Östergötland, to me at least. I suppose you could argue that the Shikishima is a bit of a threat, but I don't think I'm going to be the primary focus of the Shikishima, seeing as, you know, the Thunder, or our Thunder, is basically showing full broadside to him, effectively, which is a bit questionable. But maybe it's just repositioning or something, I don't know. But right now, again, I should be rotating my bow, basically actually angling towards the enemy thunders, which I'm pretty much doing at this point. Again, another super heal comes in, and well, at this point I really am questioning why the enemy ships are not using AP. Although I'm not 100% sure of the fact that if the Conqueror can heal full AP damage. I don't think it can. I think it can only fully heal burn damage, or AP, or HE damage. But maybe someone can correct me on that in the comments. That being said though, our tanking mission here, and again, being cognizant of where the Östergötland possibly could be, has really paid off. It means pretty much I'm able to hold off the majority of their team with no real worries, largely. Now that's not to say that the rest of my team couldn't be doing more, but they did get the kill on the Shikishima, which is always good, which allows us to push and maybe take D potentially. Now again, the Östergötland did just pop up on that other side of the map, which means once again we're angling, constantly being aware of the ships around us is such a huge part of this game. So you have to be cognizant of that. And again, we're being careful not to overturn, because again, the Östergötland, European DDs, their torpedoes don't do the most amount of damage, so I'd rather take 1, maybe 2 of those versus showing full broadside to a Thunder and taking 20k HP or 30k, or maybe just a detonation. But at this point the enemy Thunder is on its last legs, which is why we're focusing it, and it does go down. And we're up to about 195,000 damage. Again, damage numbers on the Conqueror are a bit iffy. And I say a bit iffy because you're shooting HE so much and you're getting fire so much that, well, enemy players tend to heal it a hell of a lot. And so your actual effective damage is, I would say, significantly less, which isn't all that good to see. I think a better number this game would be, you know, the potential damage, which is 1.5 million, which is pretty decent for a Thunder. And at this point, due to a combination of really nice tanking and, you know, just being aware of the ships around us, we turn a potentially losing game, or a very strongly losing game, especially when they had the DD advantage, into a pretty much won game. And, you know, before this I never really played the Conqueror, and after this game I'll probably never play the Conqueror. But I like to think it demonstrates the ability of, because obviously the Ostergotland's coming through that island, and well, that's a prime location for torpedoes. I've done that many times myself, so it's always good to just nicely dodge them. And we line up for another beautiful salvo. Oh, I swear, there's no better feeling than getting a full HE salvo on an enemy DD. I think the only feeling that rivals it is perhaps getting a full AP salvo on a Kaba. Well, obviously not anymore, seeing as they're limiting the amount of AP damage that the Kaba does take. But there's some feelings in the game that are just beautiful, and that's definitely one of them. Now, there's not much left to do. We are pushing here. We do have the points of damage, or points advantage. We do pick up a high caliber, we do pick up a Confederate, which is really nice. Getting a lot of achievements this game, which is always nice to see. And we do manage to slowly inch our way up to about 221,000 damage. And again, I think the Conqueror is one of the few ships in the game where these damage numbers are... You can get these well, I don't want to say consistently because it's still a huge amount of damage, but you get them more often than, we'll say, with other ships. And again, this is another pretty obvious torpedo salvo. He does get a flooding, but again, European DDs, although the torpedoes are fast and they're very fast and very tight spreads, they don't do all that much damage, which is a nice thing considering I'm just on 25,000 HP. Although they are they're pretty fun DDs to play. I'm currently grinding through the European DD line right now, and we're up at the Ostergotland. It's a pretty fun DD line. But that being said, I'm probably not going to be taking any more shots at the enemy DD. He's going to be staying undetected. Somehow those torpedoes did hit me and hit the torpedo belt, but they did cause a flooding, which is a bit unfortunate. And what can you do? But we do get the kill on the enemy carrier. We do 231,000 damage, and well, with that being said, the game does end. And well, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.